co-composed acousmatic storytelling is a possible approach to this. So acousmatic music, some people might be familiar with it. It's basically the music is composed within a composition studio using manipulated and recorded sounds by the composer and presented to audiences via speakers in darkened spaces. And it's a powerful and poetic method of engaging with sound. It arose from the groundbreaking musique concrète experiments of Pierre Schaeffer in the 1940s. And notable composers within this field include Michel Chion, Amanda van der Gorn, and Trevor Wishart. I'll just get my place in here. So acousmatic storytelling came about by composer Panos Amelides, an acousmatic composer, who became less interested in exploring sound per se for its own qualities and wanting to engage with world issues around him. So what he did was he brought together the acousmatic music traditions with the technique of storytelling. And this is just to say I've got these little postcards here if anyone wants one that captures this image. But basically, acousmatic storytelling is recorded spoken word set within composed sound scenes using a variety of materials. So this might be archive material, soundscapes, referential sounds. For example, the bells in Lugano would be a wonderful reference point, as well as music quotations and also transformed sounds. The acousmatic story then, the narrative is presented through multiple layers of material that can work together or independently to tell stories, offering different perspectives to a story, and more importantly, it's an open story. So the acousmatic story would be presented through the speakers and mingle with the listener's imagination, who then completes the story for themselves. So it's not a closed story. People are free to interpret it and complete it as seems right to them. So what I'm proposing then with my research is to extend the notion of acousmatic storytelling. Panos Amelides offered it as a new method of historical representation. And what I'm suggesting is that it can become a method of collaborative creative practice with which to tell contemporary issue stories, climate crisis stories, and also to present stories in an ethical way, to tell ethical stories. So what I've been doing in this first year of my PhD, which obviously involves a lot of literature review, is to look at the nature of collaboration. I've got a simple diagram here that Alan Taylor came up with about the working relationship between composers and artists. And what he did was, using research that he was looking into, he looked at different types of working together relationships. So is there a hierarchy in decision making? Is it down to one person what decisions are made? How are tasks organised? Are they divided between people or are they shared equally? And this has been a really important part of my research because I've always regarded myself as a collaborative practitioner, and what I've discovered in my reading is that actually this is a very slippery term, and a lot of my work could be described as hierarchical, where I'm making the final decisions or someone else is, that it's cooperative, that I'm working with someone but we're doing very different jobs and then we come together and share on the decision making, or consultative, which is definitely, I'm also a community musician and I might be working with people and we're all working on the same task, but ultimately I might be making the final decision of that work. My aspiration is to develop a method of collaborative practice that is collaborative working, whereby the tasks are shared equally and the decision making is shared. And the idea being that this can be an involved and intense experience that can transform both participants within the collaboration, all participants, and that actually there's synergy, that what is produced is beyond the capability of the individuals within the process. So barriers to this, a significant one is attitude and behaviour. If I as a composer work with a musician and I refuse to step out of that role of composer, and the musician sees themselves that we're addressing problems but we're addressing them from our point of view only, then that's going to create a difficulty with this collaboration. So it's about being open, sort of bleeding into each other's roles, really, not seeing ourselves as separate, that we're sharing. The language of the art form is important. So if I were a composer working with music notation, and maybe collaborating with a scientist who has no knowledge of music notation, that's a significant language barrier. Fortunately, I'm working in the field of sound, and everyone's engaging with sound. So if I talk about archive material, that soundscape, very quickly, you know, that can be simplified. The other important thing to say is that the audio software I work with is very basic. I love it. It's open source Audacity. It's very user-friendly, and then simple recording devices. And obviously people are more and more used with their mobile phones to recording sounds. So again, another barrier that I feel is averted or reduced with whoever I work with. Finally, and there are other barriers. Obviously there's finance and all sorts of things that can come into it, but I'm looking at in terms of the relationship with my co-composers. So a lack of mutual understanding. So again, this is facilitated by if you're prepared to let go of your role and try and reach out and connect with the person you're working with and find a way to translate your positions. I'll talk about this a little bit more with one of my collaborations. Right, so what I would like to do now is look at my emerging practice. I'm focusing on 3 works that I've been involved with in the last, since 2021. So Imagine Boundaries, which I worked on with creative writer Joanna Dobson, who's based in Sheffield, is a work about loss. And the Imagine Boundary is actually imagining a world without birdsong, without birds. But it's approached through a very personal perspective of, so Joanna at the time was writing a memoir about the loss of her brother when she was a child, and the fact that the family weren't allowed to talk about it. And the only time that the family really functioned normally, you know, or healthily, was on bird watching trips. And this was at a time when the marsh harrier, which is pictured here, was facing extinction. So this was in 1972. So, Imagine Boundaries weaves together these stories of loss from different perspectives, timescales. It's non-linear. We use material that, such as telephone conversations that Jo had with her mother during lockdown, remembering these trips, and also the voices of scientists during the 1960s when Rachel Carson was talking about the impact of pesticides on bird populations. So there's a lot of material mixed along with transformed sounds. So I have blended the urban sounds with sounds of birds to try and capture something of the Anthropocene. And the impact of humankind on the environment. This was the first engagement with working with someone on an academatic story. Looking back on it, it wasn't as collaborative as I would have liked it because there were clear divisions in what we were doing. We were also working on a paper at the time. Jo is a great writer, I'm not, and so she was working more on the article and I was working on the composition. But this got me going on my research. My supervisor at the time for my MA said yes, he could see that this could go into a PhD. So then I took a gap year, as you do in your 50s, and I managed to get a residency with the Leverhulme Centre for Anthropocene and Biodiversity. I think I pronounced that wrong, but Anthropocene. And I managed to link up with soil science historian Theo Tomking on a work about sustainable food production. So this has been quite an important collaboration because this is the first time that I feel that I'm close to achieving the sort of collaboration that I aim at with someone, whereby he has no experience in music composition, I have very little knowledge of growing and soil science, and we've been able to translate our positions through him talking about typology, the mapping of soils, and also about soil formation and layers, and I'm talking about sound materials. He's the one that's been going out recording all the soundscapes. We've both been conducting interviews with people from British, Afro-Caribbean and African backgrounds, growers, and this work is near completion. So I just want to mention the other work, A Yorkshire Story. This has been composed with adults living with dementia in care homes. What I realised again with my research and collaboration is that there has been a difficulty to achieve the type of collaboration that I want, because there is a lack of agency to a point, because of technological barriers, because working from week to week, people aren't necessarily remembering what they've been working on. A breakthrough moment here has been the fact that a member of care staff talked about live composition, whereby we actually compose in the space, in the time, where maybe someone's recounting a story, people are generating sounds that would support that story, and it happens there so that people have much more involvement. And I'm working with Sheffield University to perhaps create tools that will make it more accessible for people to maybe generate sounds or to record one another. I hope I'm not gabbling, but please feel free to talk to me afterwards. I do talk quickly. I am excited by this project. The important thing here is ethics. I'm working with someone with material that's very personal, that is identifiable to an individual or community. So there are forms in place for consent, but what's really important to me is that my co-composer knows at any time they can stop the process, say, I don't want this composition to continue, or say, I don't want that material included. Any participants involved have a right to say at any point, certainly during the composition stage and when the work's completed, I don't want my material included in the work, so that can be removed. At the same time, there has to be respect in the material that I'm working with my co-composer, that we don't try and manipulate what someone has said, their intention, their meaning, to suit our own. The great thing about the acousmatic story is it doesn't matter if there's a divergence, if there's a clashing of thoughts and ideas, because the whole point is the listener forms their own opinion. So it's not about making neat stories, they're messy stories. They're open stories. So let's just see. So next steps. So is continuing developing the work with the people with dementia to make sure that there's more agency for people involved, that we can get a real collaboration. To explore multidisciplinary projects. So I'm going to be collaborating with an architect and a photographer on a project about a community in Spain that was displaced because of the flooding of a valley. And I'm also interested in exploring the life cycle of collaborations. So let's just see if there's anything I've left off. No, what I would like to say is that if anyone is interested in hearing Imagine Boundaries, there's my email there. It's also on the postcard. If you email me, I can send you an MP3 version of the piece, which is 23 minutes, which I feel captures the potential of the acousmatic story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia, and also very good. We are gaining some minutes, so I'm very happy. So we have 7-8 minutes.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Just to say, I can play a sound piece if there aren't any questions, if people want.
So there are some questions from the public.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to ask Emilio, so I'm going back to my... So what I'm going to do, because we've got a bit of time and there isn't a rush of questions, I'm going to play the long version. So this is Growing Stories. This is what I'm working out with Theo Tomking. Are we okay for this? Yeah. Okay. Oh, so how do we play this? Can you play it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Dad, I'm recording. What's going on right now? What are we doing? Is this...
It's banana.
Was it? It's a banana.
Yeah. That's I think it's a tropical one. It's a tropical banana. And they haven't sort of bred it. It sort of die back a bit in winter. But I think I took it from the neighbors, and it's sort of like adapting itself to the weather.
Yeah.
It didn't give any, didn't flower last year in the front of the house, I mean from the neighbors. But don't want it to flower, just to have some nice big leaves coming up, just for the look of it. So nice. Reminding me of home.
Yeah?
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah, just planting it, reminding me of home.
I remember when I'm going back to St. Lucia initially, and I used to put my hands in the soil, and there's sort of a different texture, okay? And one of the texture of the land is like, it's like bull, beef, it rips apart. It's just awesome, really, it's awesome, working the land.
The allotment site I was growing on had existed for over 100 years, so the further I dug my hands into the soil, I could almost reach out and touch the fingertips of the people who had been cultivating that before.
Thinking about soils everything this is about soils that are alive and the life within soils that's a living thing. It's not a single organism. Is it an ecosystem? Is it all these organisms living off this inert soil material?
Yes. So I can ask if there are some, just one question or don't know. But okay, so then we ask you the question in the
of
pause.
course. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
Gracias.
thank you. Thank you
for
very
listening.
much. Just 2 minutes because we have to link online with next speakers. In the meanwhile, if you want to come to take the really nice postcards of Giulia are here. Very nice. So, and I move there to try the connection. Alessandra, sai se dobbiamo aprire Skype o se è già aperto? Ok. Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Okay, my name is Emiliano Battistini. Nice to meet you. I
Hi.
will be the session helper. So you are ready for your presentation? You have to share some slides or visual.
Yeah, well, we are already working kind of the whole morning because we never use Skype. But for me, it's very difficult to share our PowerPoint file.
If you want, I have here your presentation in a memory.
Can you have a look if my sounds are in it as well? Otherwise, I need to send you the 3 sound files. The sound files are in page. Let me see. 13, 14, 15.
Okay, so you send us also the sound, your sound.
Yeah, the sound should be in the PowerPoint, but maybe you didn't receive it in the PowerPoint presentation. If not, I can.
So you are sharing something or?
Did you receive the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, I will open it. Just a moment.
Because if I try to share with Skype, of course that would be best. But can you explain me otherwise how I can share it?
Yeah. Just a moment. Okay, in this moment I'm showing your presentation.
Can you see it at page 14 or 15? Sound files are in.
Okay, just a moment. Yeah, 13, there is a sound here.
Okay. You click it because mine is also in it, but this isn't.
But it said to me that it's impossible to listen to the sounds. They missed the link. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can I send you the sound files for you? Sorry.
I don't know. Yes, we can try. We can try. We can start the presentation. In the meanwhile, collaborators will bring us the sound, your sounds. We can try to do this. So you have the email.
Sorry for this confusion.
No, sorry, sorry for us. Online, and please also, I heard also another voice from Judith. Maybe.
Yes. Yes.
Judith, you are there also.
Yeah, I'm here now. Let me see.
Okay. Now I don't see you, but yes, we heard you. We heard you.
Okay. Okay. Let me see the text. So maybe we can't see the presentation you are presenting. So
you can say to me page 1 or slide 1,
okay.
slide 2.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Okay. So I just start with slide number 1.
Okay. So I say to the public that we start. So we start.
Okay.
So just a moment to present you.
Okay.
Judith van der Elst, Frouke Wiarda. Judith, she's a researcher, I'm sorry.
Oh, we'll do our introductions ourselves. That's fine. Yeah.
University of Applied Science, Groningen. Okay. And Frouke Wiarda, she's an artist composer and interdisciplinary art project innovator that has previously worked with the phenomenon wind in her artistic practice, and she has also been pivotal in several multidisciplinary projects which she actively and innovatively involved other
so
artists.
I just start with slide number 1.
Okay, so welcome Judith and Frouke, and you can start your presentation, and I follow you with the slides.
Okay, so slide number 1. Today we would like to introduce our Sonic Cheese project. It's a project in progress. We introduce the concepts and specifically focus on our motivation and exploration for the atmospheric terroir. We briefly introduce ourselves. I'm Frouke Wiarda. I'm a sound artistic physiologist, a researcher and collaborator in various multidisciplinary projects, in which I actively and innovatively involve our artists and partners. The collaborations result in combinations of new acoustic and electronic instruments, performances, and multimedia artworks in sometimes real-time interactive systems. And my aim is to continuously expand my knowledge, seeking innovative solutions to social issues. I'm Judith. I'm trained and worked as an archaeologist in the United States Southwest, where I specialize in linguistic approaches of geospatial technologies. Represents at the intersection of science, art, and technology with a great interest in land-based knowledge systems and embodied practices. And I've co-designed and participated in community and art science projects in the US and Europe. Next slide, please. So we will start with a brief introduction of today's presentation, followed by an overview of how this project started. And then we will segue into the core of today's presentation, the exploration of sonification of the atmospheric terroir. The importance of doing so Bacterial-rich milk is a necessity for great cheese, and rich milk is the result of a biodiverse environment and diet, the terroir. In artisanal food making, we usually think about terroir as the ground, earth,
seem ephemeral and fleeting, we believe the materiality of the sphere is much more important to the characteristics of local regions and life within it. And in order to explore the relationship between the dynamic atmosphere and the taste of the land, we believe sonification is an ideal method. Sonification of environmental data is not entirely new, but in our visual-dominated world, we forget that sound is an essential medium of communication and meaning-making in the living world, as well as impacts behavior and health of organisms in their environment. Next slide, please. So the story starts with Judith, who for a while worked as a cheesemaker and learned about the curious fact that the taste of cheese can be influenced by playing different music during the ripening process. This raised many interesting questions and a desire to actually test this in a transdisciplinary way. The importance of bacteria in our lives is more and more recognized. So how does the fact that they change their behavior in response to sound and music influence all of our lives? It has been tested with conventional music in limited studies. But for our project, however, we wish to sonify the local environments and compose atmospheric soundtracks that will create uniquely tasting cheeses. We briefly introduce the cheese body, a new life form, as a mimetic of the animal's stomach, and then describe the concept of atmospheric terroir and the current process which we are exploring to create these sound files. Next slide, please. So as I already mentioned, that for centuries the humans have symbiotically together with goats, sheep primarily, and have fermented plant material into their milk in their special stomachs. Next slide, please. Even in the artisanal cheese world, we have integrated technological innovations to extract the milk from the animals and make our work a little easier. A major player or players in this whole process, however, are the bacteria that convert the fresh milk into milk products. Lactococcus lactis is a major player in this fermentation process, making the milk curdle. The advantages are clear. Foods are safe to eat, last longer, and often taste better. Lactococcus has changed genetically over the years of human intervention, but what is still special about them is that they can live in both aerobic and anaerobic environments. We would like to learn more about Lactococcus and other bacteria in the wild and how we can live together in multi-dimensional ways. We know they respond to their environments, especially to the sonic world. It's time to test this in innovative ways, and to do so, we have teamed up with several partners. Next slide, please. In this project, we already work with several partners that pick up specific aspects of the project. Originated within the Art and Music School of the Hansa University of Applied Sciences, the project is part of the Sense Ecology and the Turbine Place projects and their student bodies. Furthermore, we work with the experimental gardens of Terra and Beo, educating a new crop of horticultural students and their art-focused program. Edward Terveen is a goat farmer and cheesemaker, also herds his animals here. Together, we are working on novel setups for cheese ripening, thinking how to evolve a larger community by setting up site-specific sound installations, unique terroirs of local weather station and customized cheese ripening boxes.
In order to gain more insight in the atmospheric processes, we have started to work together with the Center for Isotopic Research at the University of Groningen and their observatory in Lutjebat. For the sonification process, I contacted Centre Henri Pousseur in Liège, that's in Belgium, the Center for Research, Production and Performance for Works of Electronic Music and Mixed Music. Patrick Delge, computer scientist, is helping with this sonification process. Next slide, please. Terroir is a concept in artisanal food cultivation, mostly associated with wine, but also with cheese, and indicates the local conditions in the process, the soil, geology, climate, and the human-directed fermenting process. Atmospheric terroir is then part of the environment in which the milk and cheese naturally come to be and result in rich milk. In the cheese cellar, the darkness of the animal's stomach, is somehow mimicked. The animal in its atmosphere is not, therefore, we believe, that since the bacteria is known to respond to music, that the cheese soundtrack should be close to the natural environment in which this naturally takes place. To test the impact of the different sonic environments, we can taste the cheese at the end of ripening, and in the future we would further explore this relationship in different arts, science, research contexts. Next slide, please. Starting this process of sound design, we explore the environment in which the current project will start. This is in the northern Netherlands, a region that is rich in natural heritage, the Wadden region. One of the largest wetlands in the world and listed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. It is also a region rich in resources that are important in the global economy, especially energy, like wind energy. Rich in natural gas and currently an important region for wind energy harvesting, and animals are grazing in this open terrain. Our sound design research plays into these dynamics, and it will work with meteorological variables, temperature, precipitation, sun hours, humidity, winds, and atmospheric pressure. The observations of these variables are collected highly accurately throughout the day and processed in real time. Next slide, please. So what is the project involving? That is, data sources are related to weather, photography, sound recording, and sonification. Local weather stations are one of our sources that provide real-time weather data, including temperature, humidity, and all the data relevant for this project. So we collect the photography data from our working field, and we integrate the daily weather data and these photographies, metadata, and sound recordings to complement our multisensory sonification. Next, we will analyze the taste in relation to the sound. And after this first process, we know the kind of taste we are after. We know what kind of sound we want. We can start creating site-specific instruments for ripening the trees. Next slide, please. This slide is a picture I took when we did our first experimental indoor setup of our system. We used the weather station kindly led by Frouke & Co., an institute that provides measurement instruments for the environment. Then the question is, how do you choose what kind of sonic output you want? The work and discussions with Patrick Elst is giving me an already more clear idea what it takes to compare the incoming data and translate it into sound and how to make sense of data for finally researching and let the cheese dry. Next slide, please. The first two models in this slide fetching essential weather data from both the weather station and the weather link cloud, and this functionality grants us access to critical variables of the weather data. Thinking of an outline to take our first initial steps, I focus on three primary parameters: wind, temperature, and humidity. These factors, when translated into sound, can form the basis of our sonification experiment. And for the sound, we developed this one sound engine pad, but we need still to incorporate suitable sonification techniques for all the different parameters. We start to work with wind data as distinctive changes in frequency, maybe to fit for temperature data as separate changes in frequencies, and humidity impulses or changes in amplitude or noise. And rain as ambience based on its occurrences, we can then weaken back into organic field recordings or real-time science-specific environmental sounds. Sounds with which crickets communicate or bird communication. In the next three sound samples, if they are possible, to let them hear. Not yet, right? I used bird communication of eagles because where we have been working and making the pictures is next to the sea. Next slide, please. This slide is, and the coming two slides are the first of a series of visual and sonic experimental activities. It is a work of listening, anticipating, and creating.
an artistic acoustomorphological approach to acknowledge a relation shared with numerous human and non-human actors, and ultimately the construct of the world through sonic ways of knowing, like Stephen Feld said. The location of the images and sound in weather data is Onion, and that's in the north of Friesland. Sounds of communicative processes in different frequency spectra weaving in and out of each other, from the constantly evolving soundscape, balancing between the known and unknown combinations. The environmental sounds, the gathering data from the landscape, will give an embodied knowledge. I don't know if you can. Do you have a sound for it?
I have at least 2 sounds, so I can try the first one if you want.
Yeah, maybe it's from this day. It's just because we're just starting with to think about sound in relation to atmospheric data. The first is more interweaving of the rise of the temperature on 9th of on the 2nd of September 2023. And so that this is the day when this picture has been made. So you can, it is starting to, yeah.
Sonic Cheese, page 13.
Yeah, that's this page, no? Let me see. Yeah, that's this, yeah. Very important. Yeah?
Yes, we listened to the first one.
Because I didn't hear it.
Okay. Do you want that we listen also the second one, or?
Yeah, the second one is with line number 2, taken at 12th of September.
Yeah. So Sonic Cheese, page 40.
Yeah, yeah.
In this moment, I like the third one, but I will try to take it. Yeah. Also, we have also the Sonic Cheese, page 15.
Yeah.
Okay, listen to the sounds. I take the presentation another time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
yes, to the presentation and page 15.
So you can go to page 16.
Yes.
What is known but not widely acknowledged is that bacteria in our and other bodies respond to sound waves and change their behavior as a consequence. What we know is that because of this, cheese that is ripened in sonic environments will result in different tasting cheeses. And with this project, we would like to make this more widely known. What we also would like is that with this extra dimension in the artisanal ripening process, we not only diversity taste, but probably also biodiversity. This project is then a beginning of seeking to better understand the impact of sound on life. And Judith, can you?
Yeah, so taste in this project is an end result of a very interesting process. What we know is that we designed a soundtrack for this process and we now test the effect of those tracks to the end result.
What we would like to understand and listen into also is the process. How do bacteria respond? How does the change in behavior take place? When the sound is subdued, do bacteria also respond in mechanical signaling? Some recent research has given us reason to believe they do so, and it would be fantastic to not only taste their behavior, but get a more in-depth notion of the dialogue that takes place, maybe through the design of novel microphones. And our curiosity is piqued through our process that we're now embarking on. Thank you. So next slide. Thank you for listening to our story of our ongoing project.
Thank you very much. So I asked if there is some question from the public, but I have also to ask to come here to this microphone, because if not, Judith and Frouke don't hear. If you have maybe any question or commentaries. Yes, we have a question. Just a moment.
Hi, sorry, this is Julia Schauerman. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you've been able to, are you able to actually look at the behaviour of bacteria in response to your sounds at this point?
We would love to do that, but we didn't yet, but that's in our planning.
Right, yeah. No, I mean, it was interesting because I actually enjoyed the sounds. Obviously, that's not the purpose for an audience to enjoy, but I thought the tones were very rich. And the first one sounded quite menacing, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something we hope to link up with sort of biolabs in order to make this more visible, how bacteria and I guess also our stomachs respond to sounds in our environments. I think that is something that's really been undervalued in our society.
I was also thinking that I mean, we are giving them the sound, but I probably they also will vibrate in some way. They are moving, and so they also communicate. Will they communicate back in a certain way to these sounds? I would love to know later on in the process.
Great, very fascinating projects that can put on the boundaries of our imagination about sounds, environment, and food. Also, the link between food and sound is very interesting. This polysensorial relationship, so very inspiring. Maybe there are another question. Okay, if not, we thank you very much, Judith and Frouke, and next time we hope to have you in person, and keep in touch, and thank you very
Some
much.
cheese, with some cheese.
Yeah.
Because next year, what our plan is, next year we will maybe try it at a certain place with the cheeses in Groningen. And then we will have a taste afterwards with really taste experts. I guess you know everything about it, because Italy is also a land of cheese. So yeah, we would love to share these cheeses with you as well. So.
Yeah, it will be a great idea for next time. So we hope, yes, to meet you and to enjoy cheese together and sounds.